So Richard Hogan has teed us up lovely. Bit late, but let's get this over with. Tipper back. So obviously, I wasn't on the show on Monday.
Why?
And, well, I attempted to stay up for the Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the Eagles. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be up till like 4 a.m. The show, we're going to have to be up at 7:30 doing preparation, all this kind of stuff. I barely made it halfway through the second quarter, and I was inside the lab.
Ah, that's pathetic. Like, you actually went to bed?
Yeah. I was like,
pathetic.
I was there struggling to watch it. I was like, this is a class game, but I can't even enjoy it. But what I did do is when I woke up, I put the highlights on without knowing the score, and I enjoyed the highlights up until that bogus late call that gifted the game to the Chiefs, which I'm sure you know all about.
You fell asleep. My God. My God.
I know, yeah. But back to Richard Hogan there, talking about Tipp being back. Obviously, I wasn't on the show on Monday, so I haven't chatted to you about it. Were you? No, you weren't at that match, were you?
No, I was at Galway and Cork, and I still haven't got to watch back the full game. Unfortunately, you've obviously seen it. I'm sure you've watched it 3 or 4 times. You watched the replay in the pub the next morning, and then you had a big crowd watching it in the pub that evening as well.
Yeah, I made them turn it on in Ryan's in Camden Street.
It was like just the bits I saw. It kind of reminded me actually of particularly that first half. Remember I mentioned it on a previous show. I think it was it the 2009 league where Kilkenny had filleted in the first half, and I think they got standing ovation going in, and they were basically saying at half time to lock them in and make them watch the replay or whatever. But like the roles were totally reversed the other day. You had a massive advantage going in at half time. Kept them at arm's length, I'd say, in the second half. What did you make of it? I suppose crucially, our Tipp back.
Well, like as soon as Liam Cahill and Michael Beavens were brought back in, it was pretty obvious that Tipperary were going to improve massively. We'll wait and we'll keep our powder a small bit dry for the summer, but like it doesn't seem to matter who they start. So there was 9 changes between this game and the Laois game, and Tipperary looked physically massive and primed. You were there for the Laois game, looked really impressive. For the first time that I can think of, you have players like routinely turning and running straight down the centre and looking to stretch defences, pop off a pass and try and get goal chances, which is what Liam Cahill's underage teams did. They were goal machines. So straight away, I was expecting this to be what Tipperary did. And throughout the first half here, like Alan Tynan, now he scored a point, but my God, Alan Tynan was just very hard to keep into. The amount of times he burst straight down the centre. I remember one time a defender came to meet him and you thought he was going to get bowled over, but he burst the man out of the way instead going. Dan McCormick was running at the opposition. One thing I'd say, Jake Morris now, he got himself some scores, and scored 1-2 from play, but could have had a lot more actually. And I actually wonder if playing on the left wing, where he was regularly shooting off his left side for a left-hander, as opposed to kind of shooting across himself, where I think he's got real power when he strikes. I actually think he probably would have scored maybe double that if he was on the other wing. And there's obviously reasons to have him on that wing. I'm sure they've thought about it, but they have him further out so that he can turn and run straight at a defence because he's so fast. But I just wonder putting him on the other wing, like maybe as a back over the years, did you prefer being on one, let's say, one corner rather than the other, one wing rather than the other?
Yeah. No, I would have always preferred. Playing in the left. I don't know. I just thought it was tidier off my left. As you're getting the ball, you're able to deliver a pass. It was back in the day. There's no point in saying any difference. It was a clearance. Like there was no deliveries like that. It was 100 yards down the line. But I would have always preferred kind of playing on the left. Yeah. But then when you get a bit older, I nearly preferred it was moved out wing back, and you'd nearly prefer to be right wing back, because if you got to open your shoulders, maybe shoot for a point, you were on your right, in a standing position, you're going to prefer to be on your right hand side. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's funny. But it would have been left corner back, and then it would have been right wing back. Do you know what I mean? They're two complete. They're like opposites in many ways, but it depends on what you're trying to do in a position as well.
Yeah. Whereas if I was a wing back, for catching the ball, I prefer to be on right wing back, so you can hope to hold your man out and then you've completely freed up your left. But if I was going forward to deliver, which feels a while ago now, I prefer the left because I just think that I have more accuracy when I'm trying to punch the ball with the left.
Isn't that really funny? Like I would go with my left.
And less of a wind up as well.
Yeah, it's just it's just like that. If you're going for a 20 or 30 yarder, I'd always prefer to be on my left. It's kind of funny like that. But if you were shooting for power at a target, you're obviously going to go on your right hand side. But it's funny if you get, and I think, and maybe you kind of mentioned off air, some of the Kilkenny lads are probably a lot more comfortable maybe on one side than the other. And I think at senior inter-county level, you just have to be equally confident on either side. You have to, you can't be able to show somebody a side and think, oh, the percentage chance of them scoring here has been reduced by X, Y, or Z. You have to be so comfortable off left and right. And the best of the best it's just, it's nuts to a monkey really either side, which they're off,
Yeah, but the Kilkenny lads that they have to come back from the Shamrocks, they're some of the classiest hurlers on both sides. So put Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen, TJ Reid and so on into that team. And, it's obviously going to improve them massively. I thought Noel McGrath looked excellent. And this, Tipperary actually had a team that was working as a unit. Like last year we saw, for example, in that humiliation against Cork were walking the ball out past Tipperary. Here, there was times in the first half, 2 or 3 times that Tipperary got a hurley in and blocked a delivery out from Kilkenny.
Yeah.
Noel McGrath, his tackling was excellent. I thought a lot of the guys were very good. Conor Bowe really impressed me. Jason Ford, probably for the first time in his career, the team is working the ball up the field and then popping lovely one bounce ball in front of him that he can turn and strike it over the bar. And, there's some of these older players with Tipperary, like Ford's only 28 or 29. Noel McGrath maybe 31 or 2. Dan McCormick is probably about 29 now at this stage. Seamus Callinan, who played, Bonner Maher, who's on the bench. These lads have appeared in the last couple of weeks. And whereas the last 2 or 3 years, you're almost thinking, geez, time's running out. The way the team is now playing as a unit, it's probably favouring these lads now. And, they're not isolated all the time. And I actually think all of a sudden the older players look like they can have huge seasons.
Look re-energised, Shane. There's a bounce in them. There really is. And we talked about the balance of the team. And having those maybe experienced lads, it's not to say that they can't cover the same ground. They probably won't be able to cover the same ground as some of the younger fellas. But that Ford's role, get him the ball, get him into those positions. Do you know what I mean? He's as good a finisher as there is in the country. And you mentioned there about Cork walking out. How heartening is it to see when you're at the other end of the field or anywhere, when you just see a lad like that and it's, he's knocking him back, he's, making him turn, making him change direction. Holding the ball up makes it so much easier for lads at the opposite end of the field, and you just have so much more confidence in what you're looking up at as well, and you have so much more confidence to know that the ball's not going to come in easy here. They're doing their part to make my job look a lot easier. I always think when defenders are walking out with ball, the defender's doing really well, he's reading the play, but a lot of it is to do with, what are 13, 14 and 15 and 10, 11, 12 doing to make sure that the ball coming in is, the percentage chances of me getting it are increased, and Tipper definitely do that now. They're fronting up an attack, which is huge really.
Yeah, and as I said, operating as a unit, and there's a lot of ignorance in the backs as well. Barrett, he's one of 3 players that's going to be injured for a while, so he bumped into Ronan Maher and he's going to be out for several weeks. I think it's a shoulder injury. Niall O'Mara, he's got a groin issue, 6 or 7 weeks. And Paddy Cadell, unfortunately, he's out for the season. Yet another knee injury for Tipperary. So that's very disappointing. But the ignorance in the backs, Michael Breen is a pig there at full back, which, obviously you want. That's a good thing. Enda Heffernan comes in, bit of size, Porrick Campion as well. And the thing is, the defence isn't being sort of stretched out like it was last year. I remember watching Tipperary, was it losing by a point to Dublin in Semple Stadium, and the space in front of the full back line was ridiculous. And you had Owen Connolly, who's probably 6'4", and a big man marking Aidan Mellett, who's a small man and nippy and fast, and nice ball popped in front from what do you expect a 6'4" man to do in that situation. Whereas here he's in the full back line. Tipperary's defence isn't as exposed. The ball isn't coming up the field as quickly because it's, the work is good, and he has a very good game. So all these players can be that bit better when they're not exposed and fast ball isn't coming in.
Can I just say something to you? Isn't it a surefire sign that a team is in disarray and not going well when you see the half back line up around midfield and you see it's a structural thing. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that 5, 6 and 7 have to be standing there the whole time. That's not, possible. But was it Duggan's goal against Tipp last year? Remember where Conlon just ran up the whole defence? Just go that's a surefire sign that things are not good, and structurally they look so much more sounder now. it doesn't, like, you're going to do well to find. You won't find a gaping hole, and you'll do well find a hole anywhere in the. It's just an awful lot tighter now. Like, look at Limerick. Limerick never happens. They're never opened up like that. There's even when it looks like there's 10 men up the field or whatever, there's always the full back line and maybe Barry Nash in front or Declan Hannon in front. There's always that bit of cover, like the way the Dublin footballers would have learned from that 2014 defeat to Donegal, where Johnny Cooper was always back or Keane O'Sullivan was always back. Tip just look an awful lot more compact. And while I wouldn't read a huge amount into some of the league results and some of the form, I would definitely think Tip looks so much sounder now than they do, and I don't think they're going to be cut open. And then I think it's just probably a mentality shift up the pitch as well. They're going to work an awful lot harder, and I think they want to break those lines. There's not going to be any handy scores taken. They're just going to go. It's going to be trying to break the line, and pop the ball off or whatever with frenetic speed and pace. And yeah, if I was a Tipperary supporter, which I'm not, I'd be hugely encouraged for what's to come, because while it is only early, like, there's been a total mentality shift in Tipperary.
I'll just go through a few comments and then we'll talk about Kilkenny. So Tip won't get out of Munster 100%, says One Stop Auto. Tip will come out of Munster, says Chris Conlon. The two boys are having a real battle there. Worst team in Munster last year, same players this year. But saying that, Cal is top class. Shane,
but you could say that, Shane, about Waterford in 19. It was the same players in 20. They got to an All-Ireland final and ran Limerick to 4 points in the Munster final. Like, you've been involved as a player where a manager comes in, it's the same group of players, but it's a completely different setup. And yeah. I'm not having a pop at any manager or anything like that, but things drop. And I do think there's a responsibility on the players, but you kind of can get beaten down in a bad setup, and everything just drops 10 or 15% across the board. And when that happens, it just has detrimental effects. Same players could be completely lifted up by a new management team or new structures or new style of play or whatever, and they can be 10 feet tall. The same players that underperformed one year can be 10 feet tall the year after in a different setup.
Yeah, One Stop Auto is asking about Paddy Cadell being a massive loss. Like, he's a player that I obviously felt should have got a lot more game time before this year, and now that he finally is getting it, does the cruciate. Yeah, it's a bit of a blow, and certainly for him. Kilkenny, do you know, I thought it was quite interesting that Derek Ling wasn't going to stand on ceremony if players weren't performing up to the level he wanted. So 23 or 24 minutes in, Cian Kenny, who was obviously a very good player for them in 2023 season, he was pulled out, and obviously he'd been thinking about it for a few minutes. He didn't just decide off the top of his head to just pull and take him off right there in the 23rd or 4th minute. So he was taken off very quickly. Alan Murphy was brought on, and he was taken off about 22 or 3 minutes after coming on. So he's not going to stand around. If he feels that lads aren't going well, you know, Conor Heary and Killian Doyle, they were both whipped at half-time as well. So he's not just going to stand around. He's going to make those changes if he's not happy.
Yeah, and like, looking at what he was looking at the other day against any team, like, you would take the open notice if someone wasn't playing well. But against Tipperary, in particular, they're just not going to be happy enough with what they were doing, and like they let Tipperary. You see it. A brilliant player or whatever. If he's allowed space on the ball, he can do anything with it. They were allowing Tipperary time on the ball, particularly in the first half the other day. I think he would have been vindicated with some of his subs. And John Donnelly came in and was absolutely outstanding. When he came in, But like, he probably didn't. He didn't lick that off the ground either. Ling wouldn't have had. Like, Cody would have been pretty ruthless, and you'd say, if things are going okay, I think it's okay to, let a lad maybe give a chance to work into a game. But if things are going as bad as they were at different stages the other day, you just have to put your foot down and look at somebody else at that moment in time. That's not to say he's going to cast any players aside, but you have to have that ruthless edge to it. And it's they mightn't have got the result or whatever, but definitely showed that he's not afraid to whip off a lad if he's not doing it.
Yeah, Richard Hogan says Alan Murphy got injured breaking the ball for the Keoghan goal. I didn't cop that. Well, when he came off, he just looked disappointed to me, but maybe you're 100% right, Richard Hogan. And both Tip goals came from defensive mistakes. The thing I'd be saying is Tipperary actually could have had another couple of goals. Conor Bowe probably be disappointed he didn't fill his boots. We'll move on a little bit. Actually, do you know what? I was messing with a couple of the Kilkenny boys afterwards, and I'd fully watched the entire game the other day, and I messaged them saying, lads, what, in a group with 3 Kilkenny lads, how did that game finish up? I stopped watching when I could see the Tipperary lads lost interest.
They'd love that.
Yeah. You joking aside, obviously it'll be very different as the months pass by.